Welcome to Sports Night in Quarantine. I'm Delaney Barrow, and today I'm joined by Andy Hewley. Every sports fan around the country is anxiously awaiting for news about whether or not we are going to have a college football season. And ever since the SEC postponed the start of three fall sports, things have been looking pretty dismal. One of the latest options has been pushing fall football to the spring. Andy, what are your initial thoughts on this huge change?
Well, I think the biggest thing uh, for that is you're going to play a lot of sports in the spring because I think we were talking earlier before this show that we could see basketball and football played at the same time, which makes it very hectic for a lot of schools, especially their athletic department staff, moving players around and getting things organized. But I also think it gives the NCAA time to kind of work some things out. So I can see it being a positive, but also at the same time, the spring is when normally the NFL draft would be and things like that. So I think you could see a lot of players who maybe were looking to play their last season at a school, or finishing their senior year looking to get into the NFL draft. They may drop and say, "Hey, I'm just going to forget this season if we don't play in the fall, and then go ahead and get ready for the pro combine and things like that." So I think you could see that happen. It could be detrimental, but I think at the same time there can be positives that they at least get to play, and also they're gonna get to wait and kind of hope things get better, so that way it's a little bit safer to play football.
Exactly. Like you said, there are so many pros and cons to this option. I mean, it's not going to please everybody. There's just no option that will satisfy what everybody wants to see. But I mean, there are pros to pushing it to the spring. Like you said, it could be a sports lover's dream with football, basketball, baseball, lacrosse, softball, all those sports happening at once. Then there's always something to do, always something to watch on TV, a game to attend. But also, there's significant health risks if the season is played this fall because the curve just doesn't seem to be flattening right now. So, pushing it to the spring would reduce that. However, because there's so much time in between, there's just a lot of unknowns. And so, hopefully, there wouldn't be an increase in cases or an even worse strain that mutates or anything. But like you mentioned, the NFL Combine and other NFL related events would pose a huge threat to that college football season because big name players could sit out to avoid injury, like Justin Fields, Kyle Trask, Trevor Lawrence. The NFL hasn't made any notions that they're willing to work with the NCAA about pushing those dates back. They're pretty firm in where they stand, and that would obviously cause some difficulty because maybe fans won't watch if these big name players aren't going to play. And the whole reason, one of the pros of pushing football to the spring would be to keep those revenue sources. And if people don't watch, then they're not going to get as much money as they would otherwise. And on top of that, having players and coaches prepare for two football seasons in 2021 would be a ton of work. And it would increase the chance of huge players getting injured, and it would reduce schedules and shorten certain time periods between, and it would be very hectic. But I think that the majority of people would be okay with that because they just don't want to lose. I mean, the universities would be okay because they don't want to lose that money. The fans don't want to miss out on a season, miss out on watching certain players show their talents. And I think that it's going to be up to the overarching NCAA. There's no longer individual conferences like some of the ones who've decided to go conference only schedules. But the main issue is just the gap between where the NCAA thought we were going to be at this time versus where we actually are. And late July is fast approaching, and that's when they said that they would have a decision made. Do you still think that that's the case? I mean, how much longer are you giving them those full, like, about 12 days to make that decision, or do you think they're going to come out with something sooner?
Uh, I think I think it will still be about those 12 days or so till we find out a decision. I just think there's a lot they have to go through. They could come to a quicker decision. We'll see. But I just think right now, I think the biggest thing they need to consider is what those smaller conferences have to do. I think the Power Five have control of their conference and kind of understand what they need to do as a whole, and kind of have a lot of say as far as what the everyone else does as a whole. But I think the biggest thing is to sort out what these smaller schools, like in the Sun Belt or Conference USA or American Conference, have to do. And I think that's what the biggest decisions are. I mean, there's 365 plus schools involved in this. I mean, you can't just, conference by conference, they can't just say, oh, we're not going to play a non-conference schedule. We're going to play straight in conference, and then not have a full ruling for what the NCAA does as a whole. I mean, that can't happen. It's overriding what the NCAA stands for and what the governing body is for that. So, with these conferences like the Big Ten and the ACC making these decisions, it's going to affect everyone else. So I think that's what the NCAA needs to sort out, is what all these other conferences are going to do who haven't spoken up, who haven't said, oh, we're going to play at all, or we're not going to play. Just whatever needs to happen needs to happen. But yeah, it's just going to be kind of sorting out the mess and then getting to a decision in a clear cut fashion.
Right, and you mentioned it. There does have to be consensus. I mean, with those smaller schools, they can't really afford to play conference only because they benefit so much from the money they receive by playing bigger name schools, and they would definitely benefit from playing in the spring rather than the fall, because if they did play fall only, they would suffer huge financial losses, the potential of cutting their football program, which nobody wants to see. So hopefully, I think at this point, everybody, there's not going to be fans if there is football in the fall. It's just not possible. But I think the best option right now is just pushing it back, and hopefully that'll also build anticipation and make even more people want to watch football because it's been such a long period without it. But there are definitely some cons associated. Hopefully they won't have as harsh effects as the cons that would be associated with playing in the fall, but we'll have to wait until the end of July to hear a final decision. But also at the end of July, the NBA is going to be starting back up in the Orlando bubble on July 31st, starting with 22 teams. There have been a few bubble violations, but everything looks to be going pretty well. They have the smart rings that supposedly showed the signs of COVID a few days in advance. I think it'll be really interesting to see this year because no team has a real home advantage because it's all played in a neutral site. Are there any teams that you're really looking forward to watching?
I would say, honestly, I think the Rockets will be a team to watch for. James Harden just joined back up with the squad. I saw on ESPN that he was practicing just yesterday with the team in Orlando. But I think that they're a team to watch out for. I mean, they're always have been in the hunt for playoffs. But I think with Harden, with Westbrook now saying that he's got COVID, so that's going to pose a threat. But I think Harden still can lead them to a championship, even if Westbrook can't be there for them. I don't know what his timeline is yet with like COVID, but he did say that he was quarantining. So we'll see if he even comes back. But still, the Rockets are a threat. I think they'll be a team to watch out. But of course, LeBron James and the Lakers, I think, will have everyone's attention to see how they finish out this season, what they can do with him and a lot of those dual threat guys that they've got. And then one other team I'm looking at is I think the Boston Celtics will have a chance as well. Also, even the Clippers too. They were really looking good in the regular season when there was actually games played in home sites. I really liked what the Clippers did. So I think those are kind of the four teams I'm looking at. I know there's more, but yeah, I think we're looking at those four teams kind of come late in the NBA season.
I have to agree with you with the Celtics looking pretty good. right before play was postponed. I mean, they have Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. I know that Gordon Hayward has opted out of the bubble, so they will not be seeing him play. But I think that they could make a deep run in the playoffs. And also in the East, I think that the Raptors are going to be looking to show out. And also the Bucks, they have Giannis there. I think everybody thinks they're going to make it to at least the finals. But in the West, I do agree with you with the Lakers and LeBron. They're always a powerhouse, and I don't think this year's going to change that at all. I think that it's going to be pretty consistent with their performance in the past, and who knows, they might win it all this year. But
Mhm.
also starting in late July is the MLB. Opening day will be July 23rd with the Yankees versus the Nationals, followed by the Giants and the Dodgers. And what's really great about the MLB is that even though they had all of those disagreements earlier in the summer, hopefully those have been resolved for a while. And also, they haven't had any positive cases in the last 5 days, which is really hopeful for whether or not they'll be able to finish this entire season. But are there any MLB teams that you think are going to make a deep run towards the World Series title this year?
I know they're not popular on people's opinion right now, but I think the Houston Astros are still a team to watch out for. I know uh, they're under controversy. It will be interesting to see how they deal with, the backlash and things like that. I know they won't have any fans, so I guess that'll help. There won't be as much jeering when they go on the road, but I will say I think they still have a really good team. They haven't lost any talent at all. Like due to this, these circumstances that they're under. So I think they're going to be a threat in the AL East or in the AL West. I mean, and they will compete for a championship. Also, I look at the Yankees. I think they've been really strong. Just in the past couple of years, they haven't been able to get over the hump. But I think they will be a team to watch out for. And then on the National League side, I think a dark horse to look out for is the Atlanta Braves. Freddie Freeman just joining the team down in Florida this week. Down in Florida. I know they've been training a little bit there, but I think Freddie getting back there for the Braves, just helping them, uh, will be a big boost because I know they lost Cole Hamels. He opted out of the season. He was supposed to be a big pitcher for them. But I like the Braves signing Yasiel Puig. I think him being in the outfield can really help the Braves, and his bat has been known to be really good. I know he's just struggled a little bit as he's been kind of floating around a few teams after leaving the Dodgers. But I think he can be a nice addition to the Braves. So he'll give them a chance, and they've already got other people who can play. So I think the Braves will be the dark horse candidate in the NL side. But of course, I think the favorite still is the Dodgers. They are the most consistent team right now, and I think their pitching proves it, but also their bats. Last year, their offense was incredible. I mean, they had doubles or more in a lot of their games. They were hitting, extra base hits. And I think that's really what the Dodgers did well, and that's why they always competed for a championship the last couple of years, and I think they'll continue to do that.
Yeah, you mentioned the Braves, and they have a really strong bullpen this year. And I know Braves fans always say this is the year they start out really strong and they just kind of fall off. But I really think this could be their year. And you mentioned Freddie Freeman getting coronavirus. And one of the scariest things about his case was that he said it hit him pretty hard and he showed a lot of symptoms, which is very scary, especially because he's a pro athlete. He's in great shape, and that just shows a lot of uncertainty about what exactly the virus is capable of. But he is back, and hopefully he is 100% health, and that would really help the Braves make a deep run. But I also think that the Nationals potentially could be looking good. They had a longer than usual break after winning the World Series last year, and historically in 2017 the Cubs started out really slow after the World Series, and in 2019 after the Red Sox won, they also started out slow. So maybe this extra time in between could help the Nationals. But I mean, my team, the Red Sox, I don't have high hopes for them just because I think this is a rebuilding season, and the shortened season is not helping them at all. They lost Mookie Betts and David Price, two of the all-stars, to the Dodgers, like you mentioned. So I think the Dodgers are pretty stacked. But thankfully, the Red Sox still have Xander Bogaerts as shortstop, and I think he's going to really look to be a team leader this year. Even if they don't do great, they will hopefully have a successful season of rebuilding and strengthening the roster and those relationships. But they will have a tough time keeping up with the Yankees and the Rays in their conference. So I think that it will definitely be a rebuilding season for them. But like you mentioned, I'm completely in agreement. I think that the Braves will be somebody to watch. But are there any other teams that you think could show a spark that wasn't there before? Or do you think that most of the teams, even in the NBA, who started off hot are also going to finish the season pretty strong?
Well, I would say with it's going to be a different dynamic. I think with baseball, it it may not really change anything because I feel like baseball is compared to basketball is a little bit different. Where I think they're used to playing in maybe what is more like a quiet environment, something that like they're not hearing too much crowd noise. But I think the NBA, it could be a lot different because basketball it doesn't really flow too well when it's quiet, and I think that could be something that might play an effect. But other than that, I don't really think it's going to be any different. I think the best team is going to win regardless. I mean, sure, crowds help all the time, especially in the playoffs, but I think, teams like the Lakers and the NBA or, the Celtics, the Raptors, I think they're going to do well. And also in the MLB, I think it's pitching to me is the biggest thing. I think if teams have their aces and they're pitching well, it's going to be an easy day of work because I think with pitching, there's a lot of times where stuff can get in your head mentally. I know because I was a pitcher in high school. Just things like that with crowd noise and stuff like that that can play an effect. But I think with an empty stadium, pitchers will be the favorite. To me, I feel like they're going to be able to focus more, and I think batters may find it significantly tougher to get past guys like Clayton Kershaw or David Price or Matt Soroka for the Braves. I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of guys out there who are going to be throwing good ball on the mound.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point about how baseball games are typically a little more quiet. There's not as much constant cheering as there are in basketball games, and baseball won't be as affected by the lack of fans, but I think that basketball, that could be a difference. Although some of the players, when the basketball tournament was going on, they said that they didn't really notice the lack of fans. They were just they're completely zoned in on the game. So I think that'll be interesting to observe. But also, like you said, I don't really think there's going to be that many surprises. I do think that those teams that started out strong in the beginning of the season and the preseason, I think that they're going to finish strong. But we will, in about 2 weeks, we'll find out when all these sports resume. So it'll be a very exciting time. Hopefully, by then, we'll also have some definite news on the state of college football. But until then, this was another episode of Sports Night in Quarantine. I'm Delaney Barrow, joined by Andy Healing. See you next week.